A lot of TV programs, and I'm associated with a lot of UFO groups. That and 550 will get you something at Starbucks. So, anyhow, it's good to be here, and I want to thank again the college and everyone with community college, and also thank my wife who was instrumental in putting together my visuals here that I'm going to show to you. It turns out that years ago, not that many years ago actually, 3-4 years ago, I could prepare my own talks in the sense of getting slides and lifting them out of books or copying documents or whatever, putting together my own arrangement. Now I literally need a priesthood to help me to get things on the computer, PowerPoint and everything. So I need a subaltern and a bishop and an altern or something like that, and they all work together to get this thing hopefully working. So they have said that when I click on the thing here, all you have to do is press the arrow. So we'll see what happens. And anyhow, with regard to the Washington National Airport sightings of 1952, there's nothing paranormal involved here, so I couldn't make a paranormal connection there for you, Peter. It is a complex case, or series of cases, if you want to think of it like that. And it turns out that every time I prepare for this talk, or prepare to write about, say, 52 incidents, it's sort of like describing a battle. Maybe Gettysburg or something similar to that, where you have many incidents going on across sort of a wide area. So you have troops moving over here from Little Round Top, and then you have another general doing this, and Josh Chamberlain doing something else. And trying to describe all that stuff, it's almost kind of hard to do it verbally. And so it ends up being a little bit confused, or it comes out sounding confused maybe, and maybe when I give it, it's even more confused than it really was. But anyhow, there are a lot of venues, a lot of places where incidents were occurring. And unlike, say, the Socorro sighting, where you can talk about one incident, or the coin case or something, one incident, the 52 stuff is not at all like that. And let me put the 1952 sightings a little bit in context here before I actually start. Well, let me first put up a slide so you'll have something to look at.
I don't think that, we haven't been using that, Rob. We've been using...
Okay, thank you. It's not there as I want. Notes on here, such as they are. Okay, the 52 sightings didn't occur in a vacuum, in a ufological vacuum. If you were to read, and do read, I urge you to, some of the words that have been written about this case, especially by Ed Ruppelt, and I'll put his book up here in a moment for you, you'll see that the activity really started around the beginning of the year, January of '52. Cases started picking up. Now, at that time, unlike now, for example, Project Blue Book, the Air Force investigative unit, was actually involved with looking into cases. And they had a little staff of people, like four officers, I think, and 2 secretaries and 2 enlisted men, no more than 8 people who were actually comprised of the Blue Book staff that worked out of an office at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. And sometimes Ruppelt, who was the head of this little group of people, Captain Ruppelt, would personally investigate a case, go on site, interview the witnesses, call them up, do whatever. So he was always flying around the country, and then he would also be flying back and forth between Dayton and Washington to confer with people in the Pentagon and then return to his office. So cases he couldn't get to, because there were a lot that were occurring after a little while, would be investigated by UFO officers at the nearest air base to where the sighting occurred. So you would have these other people who weren't normally part of Blue Book, sort of dipping their finger into the lake, if you will, and they had their little role to play in ufology. And then when their investigation was done, they would move back out. So you had sort of a virtual network of people who also helped with the Blue Book folks. Ruppelt noticed that as 1952 progressed, the volume of cases started picking up. And it's kind of interesting to read his book. He says, we decided to get a news clipping service. That would be the best way to keep abreast of the latest sightings that were going on. He couldn't get to all of them, even with these guys at the Air Force bases who would do investigations. He still couldn't investigate all of them when a flap occurred. So to keep knowing what was going on, he decided to get the news clipping service. And it started out, he said, where, every week or so, there'd be a little envelope, a business envelope of sightings would be mailed to him. 52 progressed and the volume of sightings picked up. And he said, I noticed the envelopes got a little bit bigger and there were more sightings in them. And pretty soon they were coming in like cardboard mailing envelopes, big things. And by the time July of 52 rolled around, Blue Book was getting 20 cases per day, a huge volume for them. And he said, at that point, they were bringing in the cases in boxes, just sort of unloading the boxes in his office. So you can imagine that out of all those cases, they were not able to really do investigations on some of them and adequate investigations on others of them. But even so, on what they could do, they found out that the volume of the unknowns relative to the knowns of the explained cases was increasing. So he had almost like, by the time July ended, maybe 40% unknowns. And that was unheard of within the Blue Book structure to that point. The Air Force had always prided itself on being able to explain 97% of the cases, or 95% of the cases. They were trying to get it down to 0. But when 52 rolled by, that wasn't the case. Here is the book Rupert wrote about his experiences in the Air Force with Project Blue Book. The report on unidentified flying objects. This is a later edition of the work that a lot of people probably did read. The Yates paperback edition or some of the other ones. This one actually has pictures in it. He started getting his 20 cases per day. And his officers were scrambling all around. And it so happened that he met with somebody from an unknown intelligence organization. He met this fellow for lunch one day, maybe in May or June of 52, shortly before the events we're really going to speak about here, that I'm really going to speak about. And it was probably the CIA, but he doesn't identify this fellow. And they were sitting down, and then the fellow said words to the effect of, I see a whole lot of cases are starting to occur here. The case numbers are ramping up. He said, one of these days, you're going to have the granddaddy of all UFO cases. It'll probably occur in New York or Washington, D.C. Probably Washington, D.C. And I guess this was just a couple weeks, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, before the sightings occurred. Well, Ruppel didn't know what to make of that, but nor did he know what the man was basing his information on. And he makes note of that in the book, and so he was a little bit primed for what was occurring. Another thing, in addition to the large volume of sightings that kept UFOs in the public eye, the public arena, if you will, was that finally the Air Force had allowed a reporter from Life magazine to actually discuss with the Blue Book people and with government people at the Pentagon the UFO problem in a serious way. And they released to this fellow, a fellow named Bob Jinnah, various documents they cleared for him to look at that hadn't been available before. His report came out in this famous issue of Life magazine. Now, it took me a little while, but after diligent looking, after much looking, I finally saw what the UFO article was. That's right there. Here's a case for interplanetary saucers. So there is a connection with Marilyn Monroe and saucers. The article turned out to be pretty favorable with regard to UFOs being an unknown phenomenon. Bob Jinnah concluded that there might be something going on here. The Air Force can't explain all these sightings. Some of the people we talked to in the Air Force even espoused the belief that maybe there was something extraterrestrial behind this. And this was a time in the Air Force when there were still some of the proponents left for the ETH hypothesis in higher positions, colonels and generals and this type of thing, in various branches. And after a while, they were sort of purged. The ETH people were replaced by other people who were more debunkers and didn't think there was anything going on in ufology with regard to anything being unusual. But when this article came out, the public suddenly thought, hey, the Air Force seems to be taking a little bit different line on stuff. So this was in the news. And And Bob Jindal plays a little role in the subsequent 1952 sightings over the airport, as we'll see later on.